Military radar advises they are picking up an intermittent primary target behind you, in trail, I say again.
The Boeing 747 cargo jet was on a routine flight from Paris to Tokyo, cruising at 600 miles per hour at an altitude of 35,000 feet. It was headed towards Anchorage, Alaska to refuel. Suddenly, at 5:11 p.m., Captain Kenju Terauchi, a pilot with 29 years flight experience, saw three large, fast-moving, unidentified objects 2,000 feet below. The largest object was described by Captain Terauchi as resembling a shelled walnut. Captain Terauchi said that the main craft was twice the size of an American aircraft carrier.
Co-pilot said it was as solid there as if you were seeing an oncoming jet with its lights on, except it wasn't an oncoming jet.
747 was nothing compared to this big flying saucer.
After several minutes of observing the UFOs, the pilots realized that the objects were now matching their speed, 600 miles an hour, and tracking them. The captain reported that the objects began, quote, making moves that are impossible for any man-made aircraft to perform. Then, without warning, two of the smaller craft suddenly rose and shot directly in front of the pilot's window. The objects came so close to the aeroplane that Captain Terauchi recalled that the intense glow made his face feel warm.
All of a sudden they appear and they're traveling right in front of the aircraft. And they were sort of wobbling back and forth as they moved. They seemed to be only 1,000, maybe 2,000 feet in front of the aircraft and traveling at 600 and some miles an hour.
At that very moment, their radio link to Anchorage went dead, leaving the aircraft flying blind. A horrifying catastrophe was seconds away when the UFOs rose and veered left.
Just deviate from some object, equilibrating 240. Spinner 1628 Heavy, deviations approved as necessary for traffic. It's quite a big, like a formation.
In his official FAA report, Captain Terauchi said we had to get away from that object.
Spinner 1628, sir, do you still have the traffic?
Disappear, Spinner 1628.
Spinner 1628, I understand you do not see the traffic any longer?
Okay.
Moments later, an urgent message came in from Elmendorf Air Force Base. The unidentified object had now appeared on their radar.
Yeah, that's 1-2 again. We have confirmed there is a flight size of 2 around your 1550 squawk. One primary return only.
Okay, where is he following him?
It looks like he is, yes.
Okay, stand by.
The phrase flight size of 2 indicated that JAL 1628 had uninvited guests, possibly with hostile intentions.
Spinner 1628 Heavy, military radar advises they are picking up an intermittent primary target behind you, in trail, I say again.
Immediately after this confirmation, the FAA requested that the Air Force scramble jets.
Do you have anybody to scramble up there, or do you want to do that?
We're going to talk to your liaison officer about that.
It's starting to concern Japan Airlines. I think it's 360 now, and it's still falling.
Yeah, okay, we'll call the military desk on this.
Although the military desk took no action, JAL 1628 landed safely in Anchorage at 6:20 p.m. Extensive media coverage around the world has helped make this incident one of the most widely reported UFO cases in history. The JAL case continues to inspire debate about the nature and intent of the objects that tracked the 747. To this day, it remains a mystery.
The Japan Airlines 747 had a saucer go around it. The papers mysteriously disappeared from the FAA office.
The 30th of January 1987. Only 2 months after the JAL report, a similar UFO event took place in Alaskan skies. But this one involved the US military. A US Air Force KC-135, flying from Elmendorf Air Base in Anchorage to Eielson Air Force Base near Fairbanks, reported a chilling UFO-related incident at 20,000 feet.
Traffic for us around 1 o'clock. Can't really tell the distance. Seems to be about full altitude.
Reactor 29, negative. I have no traffic and you're 1 o'clock.
The pilots reported that the object was strikingly similar to the UFO seen by the JAL flight, a massive, disc-shaped, noiseless object larger than an aircraft carrier. Seconds later, Anchorage Air Traffic Control asked whether the KC-135 still had the object in sight. The pilot replied yes, and added that the object was now only 40 feet from his aircraft. The recent incident involving JAL Flight 1628 even came up in their cockpit recording.
We're from California, just visiting up here. People see this sort of thing a lot other than Japan airline type?
Actor 29, it's very rare seeing the lights up there.
30 minutes later, the Anchorage control tower passed on a message from the local FAA office.
Actor 29, the quality assurance staff at the Anchorage Center here requests you give them a call after you land at Eielson.
That is concerning the object we're looking at?
Affirmative, sir.
I think pilots make especially good UFO witnesses. They know what's normal in the sky and what isn't. They've seen all different kinds of airplanes routinely. When a pilot reports a UFO, there's a better than average chance that that's what it was.
The 31st of January 1987. Less than 24 hours after the KC-135 encounter, yet another UFO-related incident occurred in the skies above Alaska. The pilots aboard Alaska Airlines Flight 53 witnessed enormous, bright, disc-like objects tracking their aeroplane. Ground control stated that no object was visible on radar, but it was the speed of the UFO craft that alarmed the pilots.
Ahead, just underneath our radar, picked up a blip. He's moving about a mile a second. Just pull out straight ahead of us, just disappear. Man, he was there and then he was gone.
If you're a pilot and you report a UFO sighting to the FAA, you might as well turn in your license the next day. The FAA, the military, even civilian authorities don't want to know about UFOs.
The first pilot encounters with UFOs took place in the 1920s and 1930s, long before black box and control tower recordings were possible.
Sightings by pilots have occurred ever since the very beginning with Kenneth Arnold.
Kenneth Arnold was flying from Chehalis, Washington, over towards Idaho. Somewhere around Mount Rainier, he identified what looked to him to be about 9 aircraft traveling in an east to west position.
It was this man, Kenneth Arnold, from Boise in Idaho, who ushered in the era of the flying saucer.
At this point is where I had this terrific flash. I looked way off here to the north, and that's when I saw where the flash came from. It was an echelon formation of a very peculiar-looking aircraft. The second craft from the rear had a more or less crescent shape, and of course I kept mulling in my mind, that's the damnedest looking airplane I ever saw.
Upon landing in Yakima, Washington on the 24th of June 1947, Arnold made what would become the first civilian report of UFOs to the US government. He described the objects to reporters as appearing and moving like saucers skipping across the water.
Somebody else twisted that around into the term flying saucer. That was the beginning of it.
His official report, made to American Joint Army and Air Force intelligence, is seen here for the first time. Arnold described the UFOs as thin, round in the front, and coming to a point in the back, and not appearing to whirl or spin. He watched the craft flip and flash in the sun, and commented that the more I observed these objects, the more upset I became, as I am accustomed and familiar with most all objects flying.
The Arnold case was extremely significant in that prior to it, there had been no talk publicly about disc-shaped, shiny objects flying around. And we haven't been without UFOs or flying saucers ever since.
Coming up, the skies above New England are rocked by 3 separate UFO encounters, all captured on tape.
You got anything flying out in the area? Negative 105 turned over. All that I just had.